Hi, everyone. Welcome to the AI powered caregiving, senior caregiving podcast today. My name is Aparna Pujar, and I am stepping in for our previous host, Ishania Antapur, who is off to her school at the end of the summer. But I'm really excited to be here today, and I wanted to introduce you all to a fascinating person that I met, and I think you'll like her story too. When you're considering care for a loved one, there's one thing families don't think about enough: who actually owns the facility their loved one lives in and why that matters. Private equity and investment firms have been steadily buying up nursing homes over the past decade, and it's raised real concerns about the staffing and quality of care. My guest today took the opposite path. Carol Wilkes is the administrator at Maplewood of Sauk Prairie, a skilled nursing and memory care facility that has been owned since 1971, over 50 years, while most of its peers were absorbed into chains. We're going to dig into what independence actually means for residents and families, whether it's a sustainable model going forward, and what families should look for when comparing their options. Carol, really excited to have you here today, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic. I'm very proud of Maplewood Sauk Prairie and excited to share with you what's been working for us.
Great, excellent. So I wanted to start off with really understanding, who you are. So tell us who Carol Wilkes is and what is a day in the life of Carol.
Well, Carol Wilkes is a mother, 5 children, a wife of 34 years. But I am proudly a daughter. And I've had the opportunity to be the caregiver for both my mother, who passed in 2018 from Alzheimer's, and now my father, who currently is 88 years old. So having the opportunity to care for them helped me choose this career path. Was I wanted to be able to provide the resources, the culture and the care that our seniors deserve and have worked hard to receive. So that is why I chose working at Maplewood and becoming an administrator here.
Well, that is a fascinating story, and I can personally relate to it. Completely different world. I started Zemplee because I became a caregiver for my aging parents. So I completely can commiserate and understand your experiences, working not only as a professional in this industry, but also on the personal side where you have gone through the lived experience of being a caregiver. So yeah, and I feel like, this industry generally is known to attract people who have, gone through a personal experience. And it's nice to know that we're transitioning that personal experience into a professional world where we're identifying the gaps and the needs the market has and really trying to come at it from a holistic standpoint of what should be the standard for caregiving and what should be the standard of care delivery. So really excited to hear that journey of yours. So back to Maplewood. Maplewood has been locally owned since 1971. So it's commendable, in this time, during this time and age. What keeps you independent? What are some of the driving factors that are making you determined to stay independent?
Absolutely. So Maplewood is a very special place. We had a gentleman and his wife who was an RN. Uh, were on this journey to open up a nursing home. And they went to a community and they met with some brothers out there who owned a construction development company, and they helped fund him. And in the meantime, in this small community in rural Wisconsin, they were able to find uh, their local doctor to become their medical director, their local accountant, their local attorney, and an HVAC who did, the air conditioning, heating, and plumbing. And these 7 families came together to create Maplewood. And they're the same 7 families today that still own us. And as a private, independently owned facility, we've been able to continue to offer that community service, that community care. Um, we have a lot more autonomy in our decision making. We don't have a bunch of bureaucratic red tape. I am honored to be able to have the ability to make a lot of decisions for Maplewood, and the board entrusts me with doing that. Um, we can base all of our decisions around the personal care needs of our residents as well as their families. And that's the difference between being an independently owned and having that personal touch versus being a corporate owned, a big entity that really have people sitting up in tall buildings that don't really get to know the people that live in their community. And that's what Maplewood has going for it. That's much different.
Oh, that is super fascinating. So they say that it takes a village, and it looks like you're a living example of that village, and
We
the fact
did.
that
It
you
was
brought
a plane where
and
everybody came from. So
yeah, yeah, and I think given the fact that this is rural, and you were able to marshal resources from the community to help drive the vision for what that delivery model should be is fascinating. And more importantly, the fact that all these seven members of your community are continuing to support that over a 50-year period. So that is a fascinating story.
they do.
um
And it's interesting too. Many of our board members actually have family members that live here that are utilizing our services. And so that speaks volumes for the type of care they're receiving, um, that they entrust us with their loved ones as well, which you don't see that very often in corporations when they're not really sending their families to the buildings they own, they're sending them somewhere else. So we're very fortunate to care for those loved ones and family members.
Yeah, oh yeah, and that sort of help increases the bar for you as the administrator, right? Because you're now being that's yeah, so it's great. Are there any decisions you make at Maplewood every day about staffing, programming, or residence care, anything where you feel like being locally owned has given you significant advantage over maybe another facility where it may not have been as easy? What are some examples, if you don't mind sharing them with our
Sure,
audience? Yeah.
sure. Many of the decisions that we get to make here at Maplewood get to be personalized for our community. So being in Wisconsin and outside of Madison, we're in a more rural community. So finding the staffing isn't as easy as being in these big cities and big communities. So we work with the local high schools. We do a lot of scholarship programs for our certified nursing assistants. We do scholarships for our nurses, so for nurses and LPNs. We work with a lot of different organizations that are community based to help employ individuals that are trying to get back into the workforce. We help take care of our staff by helping them with childcare needs and utilizing different transportation services that um, different employees can work together to ensure that people are getting to work on time and safely. We also understand that family and work ratio is so important that we want to make sure that um, we're looking at the whole staff and not just that they're just a worker, but that they're a whole person and they come with a lot of other parts to it. We also get to support all of our local organizations. So we currently have a nurse that works for us that sadly lost her son a few years ago. And every year we do a toy drive for that nurse in the organization that she represents. So it's something close to home that we get to give back to one of our own. We also work with a lot of the other volunteer organizations and hospice organizations as well. So we bring a lot of people into Maplewood in a community sense versus just a broader sense. We do a lot of community support groups. So we have grief and dementia and caregiver support groups, along with we're doing currently, we have a bereavement group for the community that they could come out and share that service with us, as well as we have an advanced directive support group that we are providing as a community resource. So we're really fortunate that we can do so many things for our community that um, we get to make those decisions as a team here versus going again to, the people up in the, or, small buildings that really aren't part of the community. And that's one of the things about an independent owned versus a chain is our owners and our board of directors, as well as our staff, are more involved with what the community is doing, and we're more focused on that.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I think that is an excellent example of in codependent organizations that are supporting each other out. So it's not just a matter of community, but I think you're building this ecosystem of partners, which
Yes,
again, they say that it takes a village, but this is like superseding that example of a village. And no pun intended, even though you said you are rural there, but I feel like this model can be adopted anywhere, right? Because I think
absolutely.
it takes a person and a half, as I say, to care for someone. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and then having all kinds of support systems in place is what makes the ultimate care delivery possible. At the end of the day, you can't keep paying for services. So, partnering with organizations and using volunteers. And especially, I think the fact that you're using students is amazing because at some point, I feel like, we have to get the younger generation involved in this ecosystem so that they become familiar with at least understanding what is the requirement, right? And especially as American families are getting nuclear and nuclear, this sense of belonging has to evolve, and no better way
Uh,
than to do that.
and because we're in a community, we get to pull community members in. So residents here also might have family members that work here. Um, People that work here might have been friends or people they attended church with. We have local pastors and priests that come out and do their church services here, so that they get to feel like they're still getting to go to church. They get to see faces that a lot of times when you move into a nursing home and assisted living, you lose that community engagement. And that's one of the things that Maplewood tries to do, is to, just because you move to location of where you live doesn't mean you have to lose the people that you grow with and that you've been a part of. But we try to bring as much of that community back into our building, so those residents feel as though they're still vital and still an important part of the community.
Oh yeah, that is amazing. So for a family that's comparing options for a loved one, what actually differs day to day between a locally owned facility like Maplewood and one that is owned by a large chain? What should they be asking for or looking for when they're making decisions about their loved ones?
Well, as a daughter who's had to make those decisions at times, you know, if when you walk into some of these chain facilities, it's kind of like chain restaurants. You know what you're going to walk into when you walk into a specific restaurant that has 100 locations around the country. You know what it's going to look like. And a lot of times that's what you're going to get in these chain nursing homes. I would look for, how have they integrated into the community? What community involvement do they have? Do they have volunteer programs? Do they have local families coming in and integrating, the residents as well? But also, what kind of services are they able to provide for the resident? Are they personalized services? Something about Maplewood is we get to make decisions based on the person and their family needs. Whereas sometimes in a corporation, it's done as, you're a resident, this is what a resident gets, instead of your Aparna, and Aparna needs this, and Carol needs this. And so those we get to personalize because we're so close with them as community members. And when you're independently owned, you have a lot more opportunity to look at the resident as an individual instead of just as a patient, or as the saying goes, as a head in a bed, right? They're not just a head in a bed, they're actually a person and a human that deserves the dignity and respect um, in our facility. And I think a lot of times it gets lost in the corporate, jungle of things along the way. So at Maplewood, we get to do that, and it's actually exciting to see when you get to personalize the care.
Yeah, there's a true meaning, small is beautiful. And I'm not, but when I say small, I don't mean small, but you are larger than life the way your community has been set up. But quality comes out of, smaller, dedicated, well-designed communities where you're individualizing everyone's experience and curating
Absolutely.
that to the maximum benefit.
And
Okay.
I think sometimes the aesthetics are draws people in, right? The big, bold, and the beautiful. They walk in and they think it's just, wow, look at this and look at that. But the reality is how often is your loved one going to utilize those things, right? So a lot of times nursing homes, especially corporate nursing homes, sell to the family. They don't sell to the resident. And
Right.
so looking at the resident's need versus what the family thinks is, they have a little cafe over here, or they have a little bookstore over here. Is a bedbound resident really going to be going to the cafe? Is the bedbound resident really going to be going to the bookstore? But what are they bringing to them so that they feel as though they're still getting the services that make them feel at home versus just a patient at a hospital? Our goal here is to have the resident, because they moved from their home, they're grieving the loss of,
Yeah.
of being taken from their independence, taken from their home, away from maybe even their spouse or their loved one. And now they're living in a smaller room and it feels like a hospital. So we allow the families to go in and decorate their rooms and put up the pictures and hang up the, the favorite clock, or to put their own television in there and make it personalized so that they can feel more comfortable and they have familiar things around them, which makes them feel like this is my home now, and makes them feel more comfortable. Whereas a lot of those places don't allow that. They have everything stocked and in place where it goes, and that's just what it is. And you have a small little corner that you can put something on as your
Mm.
little personal decoration.
Oh, that's amazing, and thank you for sharing that. I can relate to the number of families that are really looking to create that sense of comfort, the sense of memories, cherished memories that you want to surround your loved one with, because that is what makes it a home, not a room, as we call it. Yeah.
Correct.
So going back to your comment about chain organizations and communities, there is a lot of private equity and REIT-based activity and transactions going on in the market today. So, what is your take on that trend as someone who's been running an independent facility? How viable is it to stay independent, or what are you seeing as I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm sure the large PE organizations have a goal and a vision for how they want to do, but how does that impact you as a facility? Does it impact you at all? Or, is there a trend where you're seeing things change more in your favor, less in their favor? What are you seeing out there in the market today?
I think that there's a place for everybody. I do think that financially creating an independent facility is a little bit more difficult. I think there's a lot of hoops and bureaucratic red tape that you have to jump through. And for an individual, it's going to be a lot more difficult than having a big team of corporate lawyers and corporate people in there helping you do this. Again, we had 7 families from the community that were like, sure, I can be the medical director, and it was a different time back in the 60s and 70s. And so today, I do believe you can still have these independent facilities. I do think because of the red tape, it is a little bit more difficult. And I appreciate the regulations that are in place and the guidelines and the enforcements. But it is, not having the deep pockets like a corporation has, it is going to be a little bit more difficult. And it's unfortunate because you're not going to get that one-on-one personalized private care that you would normally get in an independent setting. The bigger corporations can build bigger facilities. So they're building the 3-4 stories facilities that can house a lot more people. Independent owners aren't going to have as big of facilities. They're going to have smaller ones. So the ability to take in as many residents and as many patients is going to be harder too. It's unfortunate because, like you said, it takes a village. It'd be nice to keep our villagers in the village and
Right.
them close to home instead of moving them, 20, 30 hours away just to get to the next facility. So it would be nice to have some more hometown places, but financially it's going to be hard. Legally, it's hard. Opening any business nowadays is difficult. And the sustainability with financials, just one of those things where someone has to really think about it. And that's where I think the 7 families that we had got together could financially and sustain us. But can you do that today? I think some people can. And I would hope they do. I hope they try.
Yeah, yeah. I think like you said, there's a place for everyone, but a community like grassroots level community supported model are the ones that can provide sustainable care over a longer period of time. I did want to congratulate you. I know Maplewood has won a CMS 5-star rating last year. So that's a true testimony to how your community has come together to maintain that level of care. I I don't think it's a small feat. So I have to congratulate you all on that accomplishment. It's truly a very worthwhile reward, I would say, to have that. And doing it as an independent organization is very very hard. I see where your efforts have gone into it.
Well, thank
So
you. And
yeah, and then so if you could change one thing about policy or Medicaid or Medicare, what would that be, and what would you want to tell the policymakers about being an independent owned facility and how you're creating a difference in the community for everyone, right? It's not just the elders, but you're creating a difference for the businesses around you as well.
absolutely. I think what's difficult um, are the insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid. They make it a lot more difficult to get residents in the facility. Um, the hospitals play a part in that because they too have to follow those guidelines. So when a resident doesn't get their 3-night qualifying stay in a hospital, then we as a facility, are we take them in? Are we taking them in on private pay? Are we taking them in on a 30-day mandate where we work directly with the insurance companies? Because Medicare won't cover it at that point. So I think, again, we have to look at the patient as an individual. We can't just standardize and say, okay, every single person gets the exact same thing. That's not what America was based on, right? We were based on the fact that everybody needs to be looked at as an individual and that we all deserve an individual look. I think that would be one thing definitely I would I would consider changing if I had that magic wand to wave and change it. I think also the difficulty for and the cost of like medications and services would definitely be something as well that looking at, senior citizens who have paid into our system, who have dedicated their lives into our system, who have served for us, who have raised children and families and built up our communities. What are we doing to give back to them? So in a long-term senior community, what are we doing to honor our seniors? And insurance, government, be it facilities being available, monetary, making it affordable. I mean, I live in Wisconsin, so selling the farm to afford retirement is actually a real thing. The people do have to sell their farms to go into a nursing home. And that's a really sad state when you have a family generational farm that you have to sell to put mom and dad into a home. And um, I wish there was a way that we could almost gift that to our seniors as they age instead of making them give up so much on top of what they're already giving up.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very profound thought there, and I completely appreciate you bringing that up because I feel like a lot of families out there are struggling every day to figure out what's the right choice for mom and dad, right? And I I also have I talk about this quite a lot in my other conversations or whether it's a webinar. There has to be this some sense of what I call as warm dues, right? Like someone took care of you when you needed a diaper to be changed. So what are you going to do to give that back, right? Yeah. So
And I don't think, I think one of the inservices that in injustices we do to families is we don't educate about what the future looks like for our loved ones. We
yes.
don't educate them on how much it costs.
Yeah.
Medicare doesn't cover long-term stays. So when somebody brings their father in and they're like, well, he has Medicare, it's a really sad discussion with him when we have to say, well, Medicare doesn't cover that. And he's like, well, where's that money coming from? And they have no idea that Medicare doesn't cover that type of service or that type of stay. Um, they don't realize that to stay in a long-term facility is tens of thousands of dollars. It's not a cheap, a cheap just fix. So not being able to provide that service for, their loved one because they can't afford it is heartbreaking.
Yes.
Because when they need the services, we should be able to supply the services for them and provide that level of care that their loved one needs just as much as the person who has the financial means to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because, we are all part of the system. And I think all of us should start thinking about, how do I want to be cared for when I'm at that point where I need care? Not, and that just not you and me, Carol, but I'm saying even the policymakers who are,
Yeah,
writing bills, etc. Like, how do they want to be cared for? Because this is a question that is very personal to all of us.
yeah.
And all of us
All
have to own this as a problem. All of us have to collectively solve this, not just as individuals but as a community and as a society
yeah,
in whole. Yeah,
absolutely. And nobody goes into a nursing home wanting to. There's
exactly.
nobody that sat across from their loved one and said, hey, honey, one day during our golden years, I'm going to have a stroke and move into a nursing home.
Yeah,
That sounds fun. Nobody does that. This is really their last resort to come
yeah,
here. And so providing them with a facility that is willing to provide them the dignity, the independence, and the support. It's so important because there's nobody in any nursing home that says, this is where I was hoping to be. They all wanted to be at home with their family.
Yeah. And the converse is also true. No family member is wanting this for their loved one. Like, that was the last thing I wanted for my dad, when he needed care. His statement was, I'm going to live here, I'm going to die here. You're going to figure out how to make that happen. So this is what
So
caused
you
it.
want to make it available for them. You want to make it so they can. And when they can't, you want to make sure that they're going to be cared for the same way you would hopefully be able to care for them if you could.
Absolutely, absolutely. What a great thought and great idea. And I'm hoping that the policymakers listening to this are reflecting on this in a way that is directionally right for all of us, right? So that's yeah. And then we're almost coming to the end of the show. So what are you watching or reading today that's interesting or fascinating? What would you like to share with our audience?
I always like to do self-help books. So I'm much more of a factual reader versus fictional reader. So I always like to do like self-development and books like that. So right now, I am reading um, the, sorry, I just went blank on it. The 5 levels of, what was it? Sorry, the 5 levels of leadership, which is maximizing your potential by John C. Maxwell. And I just love all of the points that I can kind of, each level I'm able to look and grow and develop a little bit more as a better leader, um, and a better, you know, member of my staff community, but also my community, with my family and outside and my neighbors as well. So I enjoy reading those types of books that help me grow as a person, so I can better serve.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been an exciting conversation, and I've enjoyed learning more about you as a person. I always, it's always nice to know who you are, and then what is inspiring you to do what you're
Sure.
doing. And to all our audiences out there, meet fearless leader Carol Wilkes, who is standing on her own, trying to make this establishment of independent elder care or senior care facilities to sustain and deliver care to the community, whether it's a small rural community or even in larger settings in urban areas. There's a need for people like her. There's a need of, she's a mother, she's a daughter, she's a wife, and she runs an administrate a nursing home. So you can see how she's combined all her experiences from all her roles and package this into a leadership role that she's using to serve our communities. And thank you, Carol, so much for joining us today. It was great having you. I wish you all the best, and we'll continue to talk to you and keep in touch with you as you progress on this journey of yours.
Well, thank you, Aparna. I appreciate you inviting me on here, and I look forward to talking with you further.
Thank you.